Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Mic check, mic check. How am I sounding?
Sounding great. Nice and clear.
Nice. Nice to meet you, Ellie. Or Eli or Ellie?
Yeah, Eli.
Eli. Okay, yeah.
We
So
got
many different ways.
we got Billy here, we got Vanch, and we have Ashar. Welcome, folks.
Thank you, thank you.
All right. So everyone here today is attending for a dev workshop with you guys.
Yeah, definitely. We are from API3. I am Dev Relations and Dev Advocate for API3. Vanch is our integrations engineer, and our Ashar is our ecosystem lead.
Awesome. Welcome to
Yeah.
all of you. Yeah, if you guys want to give a short introduction to, kind of like your day to day at API3, go for it.
Oh, definitely. For me, developer advocate, I'm kind of in the mix of a lot of different things. Talking with other DevRels, working on collaborations with something that we can do, kind of cool with API3 tools, like creating, workshops and MVPs, and then a little bit of integrations. And then when something gets a little bit like, hey, we can make something out of this for the chain, we bring in Vanch and Ashar to, help make things a little bit bigger for production on there. I'm not sure if Vanch or Ashar want to say anything on there.
Yeah. So, I'm Vansh, and I work as an integrations engineer with the API3 DAO. So I've been working with them for almost 2+ years at this point. And yeah, I'm just managing the integration stuff, or working on proof of concepts, testing chains, and then managing QRNG and stuff just around it. That's it.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sure. Where do you want to go?
I think he may be silent on this and just kind of hanging out for it.
That's fine.
Just here for backup, just in case.
All right. So I guess that's good enough, folks. And I'll let you take over here. You have a presentation prepared.
Yeah,
we're going to get into building smart contract, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. This is a quick presentation. It won't take too long. I like watching technical workshops, but then when they're 40 minutes of a PowerPoint, I'm like, no. So we're going to go really into it, give you a quick overview of what we do at API3, and then we're going to get to building. So, API3 is like real world data for Web3 straight from the source. So what that means is we have first party oracles. So we get it straight from where the API is, or where there's price feeds or anything. It's straight from the source. We're not getting third party and then relaying it over. It's direct from the source right on chain. So for today's workshop, we're going to do leverage your social content and reward viewers on chain. We're going to be bringing an off-chain data API, and we're going to bring that on chain, leveraging Chain API, one of the tools from API3. And then we're going to also showcase DAPIs, which is our price feeds, and then integrate those two together in a single project.
Yeah, so SocialFi is pretty hot right now, so it's a relevant one to do it on.
Definitely. So yeah, definitely something very cool that you can do in Arbitrum today. So your support team, whenever you have issues or problems, the number one people to reach out to would be Vanch, the integrations engineer. Or if you're having problems debugging or any general questions, I would be the point of contact. So developer advocate, dev relations. And so the workshop breakdown is going to be in two pieces. The key learning points today is going to be learning about Chain API plus AirNode, which is that tool lets you bring the off-chain APIs on-chain. It works in a 2-transaction process in which you would request the API and then it would receive it in another transaction. This is also how we work with QRNG, which is our random number generator. So then you can pull real random number data numbers online on-chain. And then we're also going to be discussing our DAPI price feeds, which is our newest product, which is always available on-chain at every second. So you can request on-chain price feeds at any time. Like if I'm a heavy GMX user, so imagine waiting for a request on a 50-time leverage and then waiting for that next transaction to come in when price changes. Not feasible, right? So
you say 50 times and I just get anxious.
Yeah. So instant request process. And then we're going to just put it all together in a project. So just to give you a quick overview, Chain API plus AirNode, what that is, again, it allows you to grab nearly any API that's out there in the Web2 world and create an AirNode that communicates with both the API outside and with our deployed, our request response contracts that'll let your smart contract request directly to the AirNode and then wait for that response to come back. It's a pretty straightforward process where you can then create your own AirNode with the tools that we're going to show you today, and then virtually pull any API that you want and then use that on chain. And today we're going to be using that with a YouTube API. The API price feeds are exactly that. They are a first-party price feed oracle, and it's aggregated with each unique source to be pushed on chain. So you see a quick example here is we're getting a price feed from Notary, DX feed, FinHum, et cetera, and then we're aggregating all those price feeds and then putting it into a central data feed that then you can use for a single feed that you can use on your chain. There are two types that we have. We have a self-funded and a managed DAPI price feed. Once the managed DAPI is purchased, every dApp on Arbitrum can use that for free. There's no additional cost to it, and there's no token required, so it is chain specific. So for any feed like ETHUSD or Wrap BTC USD, once that's purchased, it is ready for anybody on the platform to use. So what we're going to be doing today is showing you how to use Chain API, showing you how to use the APIs, and we're going to put that together to a prediction smart contract. We're going to predict, how many views the YouTube could get with a small little challenge as well. So for those that are watching out there, if you want to fork and copy it, the small challenge would be like, creating this project and using this specific YouTube live stream ID and predicting how many views it'll get. So we can definitely show that in the future. And enough of that. We're going to get right into building. I will show this link a little bit later as well. I would suggest to not try to fork it and copy along just yet. I would watch, because it is a lot of information to swallow at one time, and then just refer to this later and then refer to this video later as well. I'm going ahead and share that link out. I'm not sure if I can share that out, but I'll put it in the private chat for you to save out too. I'm just leaving it here for anybody that wants to scan the QR code. And then right here, if you want to join our community, you can definitely check out the GitHub and our API3 DAO, our forums, and the most active place to get the quickest response would be the Discord. And then, just go ahead and follow that invite link as well. I'll go ahead and copy that over if I can. If not, I'll post it a little bit later as well. But let's get moving. I'm going to pass the torch over to Vansh, and he's going to show us how to use Chain API. And then once we get that deployed, we'll go into the DAPIs with myself and then show you how to build that smart contract.
Cool. So yeah, I'll share my screen quickly. Thank you.
Yeah, once you share your screen, I'll just pull it up on stage.
Yeah, I guess this works.
Let me know when you're good.
Yeah, is it streaming?
I can see it. I'm just gonna bring it up once you're on your screen.
Yeah.
Cool. All right.
So we will start off by deploying our own AirNode. So just a quick little introduction of AirNode. So AirNode is basically AirNode is a serverless oracle that is developed by the API3 DAO. So it's a first-party serverless oracle. So how it works is that any data provider with a REST API can basically just get their data on-chain. So it sources the data from directly from the data provider. So there's no middleman, there's no Oracle network node that you would have to interact with. And it completely depends on sponsoring your funds with the sponsor wallet on that chain. So you don't have to pay for anything. So I would just quickly get here. Okay. So how it works is it's basically it interacts with the request response protocol. That is the AirNode RRP v0. So how it works is you can make a request within a smart contract to the AirNode that in turn calls the protocol contract and makes a full request. The request then gets added to the event logs and it returns a request ID to the requester. So the AirNode then picks up the request ID from the event logs, the on-chain request, and then it calls the off-chain API. And then gathers the response from that API and then calls the callback function, the fulfill function within the requester contract with the data and the request ID. So this way, you can basically source the data directly from the data provider without having to go through a middleman. So today, what we're going to do is, as Billy said, that we would be needing to deploy an AirNode. So we would deploy an AirNode using Google's API. So Google has a REST API that you can use to get the number of views in each video. It's a single API call. So this is a documentation if someone would want to go through. You can just check this doc. So for this tutorial, we're just going to quickly deploy a small AirNode. So just pull up Postman. So this is the URL that we're going to use. So this is a test API key that we have that we're going to use to pull out the views. So as you can see, this API returns all kinds of stuff. So it returns the view count, the like count, the comments, and like all of the other info that you would want to use. So for this particular tab that we're building, we would need the total number of views in a video. We can supply it by giving it the video ID that you can find in the YouTube link. So if we open up any video, you can just copy the video ID from the link. And for this particular video also, you would have a link. You can copy the ID and just paste it here, and it returns the view count. So now, how do we call this API on-chain? So as we know, we can't do that. We would have to deploy an AI node. To do so, we're going to use this tool built by the API3 DAO. So it's Chain API. It basically helps you configure your AI node. So to deploy an AI node on-chain, you would have to, you can deploy it on any cloud provider. So you can deploy it on AWS or GCP. Today, we're going to deploy it on AWS. So to do so, you just go on Chain API. You register. So by registering, you're just connecting your MetaMask with it. So you just sign the request. And yeah, you'll be in. So it walks you through almost everything. You can also check the docs for Chain API on how the node works and like how the configuration, it just generates a configuration file for you to deploy on a cloud provider. So yeah, you can start building an integration. So click on Integrate API. So we can name it Google API YouTube. We can add like a category to it. For now, we can just add Web3. I think should be enough. What this API does to return the YouTube video stats. And yeah, you can also paste in the documentation URL if you would want to do that, but we can just go next. So this is the base URL that you would have to set. So if you go back on Postman, googleapis.com /YouTube/v3. So this would be our base URL. If someone would want to know more about the API, they can like actually go to the API docs and can just look at it for all the parameters that you would want to pass. So yeah, we would just paste in the link here, make sure it's HTTPS. For security scheme, it requires an API key. So for authenticating with Google API, I think you have two choices. So you can either like generate an API key or you can have an OAuth client. For this example, of course, we're just going to use like a REST API key because it's much more easier to set up. So add in a key in the query parameter and click on next. Then we need to name our endpoints. So if you come back in Postman, the name of the endpoint would be videos. Just go back. And the path would be /videos. So this particular endpoint takes in some query parameters that we would want the user to pass, like the video ID, the YouTube video ID, and all of that stuff. So let's just head back and see. So this is again one of a parameter that the YouTube API would require. So we would want to pull in the statistics. So we're going to pass in statistics here, but it's going to be query, and we'll just let the user define it. Then we'll also have one more parameter named ID. Yeah, here. It's ID. Again, it's going to be query parameter, and we would let the user define it. And that's pretty much it. And the key, as you can see here, we're going to hard code the key within the AI node. So this API key would be managed, of course, by the API provider. Or we can let users pass their own API keys, but for this example, we're just hard coding it within the AI node. So that's why we added it as a security scheme. After this, we also have the option to add reserve parameters. So whatever response the AI node returns, if you would want to hard code and like what response the JSON returns, we can do that too. But yeah, we can encode those parameters later while making the request too. So we have successfully integrated the AI node. And just go. So this is the integration that we did. So you can now go on deploy, click on new deployment. Let's just call it Google YouTube API. Select the integration. Oh, deployments must be lowercase. Okay, Google YouTube API. Oh, okay. I think this just works. So you can now choose your cloud provider settings. So if you would want to deploy it on AWS and GCP, we're going to deploy it on Amazon Web Services. So just select this on US East 1. You can use the default settings for the region and the node version. And now here's the fun part. So you can now select all the chains that you would want to deploy on. So you can have it multi-chain if you would want to make the A node have requests on multiple chains, but we're going to do Arbitrum. Yeah, so let's just add Arbitrum Goalie and Goalie just to test. Add like one provider extra just to be safe and click on next. So authorizers are basically access controls for your node. So like if you would want to add like a gated access, if you would want a particular smart contract, like allow a particular smart contract to make a request to the node, you can set that, but we would want it public for anyone to come in and make a request to the node. So that's it. You can just
sorry to interrupt. So with Growly on Arbitrum deprecating soon and Sepolia kind of taken over, is it the same process when they do it through Sepolia?
Yeah, so if there would be a new network, it would show within the network section. So yeah, you can just go in and like select that network, like, or it would reflect here as soon as it. Yeah, so you can also do it on Sepolia too. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All right, so we just make it public, and yeah, we can just like the one final time we can review all of the stuff and click on next. Now, yeah, so this is the process where you would want to deploy. So you can now download the files. So you can see the Google YouTube is here. So this is the configuration file. Like you would have to deploy it yourself because you would have to put in your AWS credentials here to deploy the node to the off-chain part of it. And in the secrets.env, you would have to put in your wallet mnemonic and the RPC provider and your Google API key. So so the config.json, again, as I said before, like it just contains all of the stuff that the node would require. So it contains the endpoint ID that it would require while making the request. It would contain the actual APIs and the endpoints that the off-chain node would call. So yeah, it's all of the stuff. You can like just do that. And to deploy it, you can just let me populate all the env files quickly.
Well, Vanch is doing that. It's basically the chain API tool lets you decide which chains you want to deploy on, and it'll autofill the Airnode IDs and everything for you. The mnemonic is to create the sponsor wallet, so that wallet can be generated on the fly. It doesn't have to have any funds on there. It's how it will generate future wallets to sponsor for like somewhat like a relayer for gas, and then obviously your RPCs that you're going to use for your chains. So you can use a public endpoint or a private one for your RPCs.
Yeah. I'm just going to use like a throwaway wallet to deploy the node. It doesn't matter. Yeah, make sure you don't add like, don't use it on a mainnet or like don't fund these wallets on a mainnet. But yeah, just going to add the API key from Google.
I assume it's recommended to learn and practice these things on testnet before
yeah,
jumping
definitely.
into the woods.
Yeah, so for Arbitrum Goalie testnet provider URL, I'm using like a public provider from Chainless, but that's also not highly recommended. But yeah, for this example, if it's on a testnet, we can use it. So yeah, we've populated everything. Make sure the wallet mnemonic is within the double quotes to prevent like the white space errors. But that's it. You can just control this. close it. For the aws.env, you will have to put in your access key ID and AWS secret access key to actually generate those keys. These are basically do this from the IAM AWS IAM console. It's a YouTube video about it, I think. Yeah. So should I just paste it in the chat? That guess.
It's also in the README document as well. So any of these scripts or anything that's happening right now is also in the README docs of the repo as well, just in case you're just looking and following along.
So yeah, you can just generate the AWS access keys using the IAM pan. It's pretty easy. But yeah, I'm just gonna copy. Have mine here. And other than that, everything looks fine. So you can now move forward and deploy this node. So you go back here. So I'm on Mac OS. I would just copy this. Just launch a terminal. And yeah, make sure you're on the root of the folder of the directory that you were running the deploy command on, and also make sure you have Docker installed. So it would pull in the Docker image and then would deploy it on AWS. So I'll copy the command from here and just paste it.
And that begins the deployment.
Yeah, it would take some time to deploy, probably like 5 to 6 minutes. So yeah, if in the meantime, if you guys have any questions, that'd be cool.
I can take over from here because we have a preview deployment beforehand, so I can move over to the presentation of what you get after you have your deployment. So let me go ahead.
Is this like on a?
That's better.
Like on a cooking show, and you do one step of the cooking, and then it's already baked in the oven. You pull it out.
Exactly.
Yeah,
this is the dev workshop equivalent.
Yeah. So I think my screen is ready to present.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll see that we had that 4 files. So once you have it deployed, you get this receipt and this log file. And so the receipt has all the information that you're going to need to get to deploy it. So it's going to give you your AirNode address that you're going to request. Also an AirNode extended public address that we're going to use to generate our sponsor wallet, like we were talking about for having like the relayers to pay for transactions. Because if we remember that the AirNode system is a request and then a receive function. So in that receive function, somebody has to pay the gas. So we're going to set up a wallet to basically pay for that gas and somewhat like a relayer. It also gives us some configuration files that we're going to need to get for our endpoint. And I know that's a lot to swallow, but there's all these resources you get after the deployment with all the details. Is basically what you get in your nice folder here. So I call it RB deployments. And so we're going to get into the smart contract part of like getting that chain. So that chain or that API is now with an AirNode deployed. And now we're going to build our smart contract to request it. And so it's a lot to in the beginning, it's a little bit intimidating. If you looked at the repo, there's a lot of code in there, but I'm going to show you in simple terms of how easily that is to be broken down. So I'm going to put this off to the side right now and show you 2 examples of like what our boilerplate code looks like. So this is a request response contract here. It's basically 3 functions, and we're setting up the parameters when I'm talking about the AirNode and the sponsor wallet and the endpoint ID is what we set up. And then what we do is we make a request, right? This is a lot of boilerplate code. So we're requesting our API, we're requesting our random number. A lot of this doesn't change. And then we get it back. So we request it out to the sponsor wallet. And then when we get it back, it fulfills, we get something with our ID or our number or our YouTube API call, and then we do something with it. So it's basically a 3 function type of system. Very, very simple. And so the other part of it is what we're going to talk about. Price oracles is pretty much a 2 function system. One, we're going to set the price feed that we want. So for our case, we're going to be using ETH USD. So we're going to set that price feed and then we're going to read it. And with the reading our price feed, we get 2 things when we get back: the actual price of the item, so ETH, and then the timestamp of when that was updated on there. So pretty straightforward, kind of simple process on there where like it's sometimes when you look at it, it's a lot of code, but a lot of it's boilerplate and we don't really have to touch it too much. So we're just going to go ahead and build that up. So far, so good. You guys follow me okay?
I am
Game.
following, and therefore I assume the rest of the community can follow,
Okay, so I'm
because
going to do this piece
I
by
am
piece.
not a developer.
No problem, no problem.
Just to clarify, when you say boilerplate, what do you mean by that?
It's template, right? Like if you
Okay.
have like a fillable form, a lot of it doesn't change other than your name and maybe the date or something like that. So a lot of
Right.
it
So
doesn't change.
it's like part of the contract that can always just
Yep. It just
exist.
stays the same every time, and then you just make the adjustments.
Cool.
So I'm just going to bring in a few imports here and getting our contract set up. So for any request response, we're always going to bring in the same contract for our air node, which is the request response receiver version 0. I think we have a new version coming out, but for our demo, version 0 is the one that we're using. I'm also using the Open Zeppelin's ownable library, so we can use the only owner function. And then we're also bringing in our iProxy for our DAPIs. Like I showed before, it was like the simple function that we can use these libraries to make it simple function calls, right? Just read and response. I'm going to go ahead and bring in our contract. I'm going to call it youtube.sol, and we'll go ahead and break this down into nice, hopefully digestible function here to get this up and running. So the first part in our function is we're going to set up our variables. And I'm going to go ahead and break this down a little bit. I'm going to delete that here. Let's see, why is this writing me here? Give me 1 second. Yeah, it's just because I have it in pieces right here. I'm just doing some events for it, so I'm going to go ahead and comment those out just yet. And we're setting up public variables. What we need to know is we need to know our air node, which we got in our folder structure a little bit earlier. I'm going to bring that back. We're going to need to know our air node. We're going to need to know our sponsor wallet, which we're going to generate. We're going to need our endpoint ID, which we're referring to. And then I'm creating a public response to see what we got back in our response. So when we do the request, we can easily see the return response. Right? I'm also going to have a mapping to show what our fulfillments are going to be. That way we can keep track of, if we did multiple responses and multiple requests off the same contract, we got to be able to keep track to see, okay, did request 1 get fulfilled? Did request 2 get fulfilled? So we're keeping track of what we have going on for fulfillments that we send out. Right? And so for our scope, I'm creating a fun little game of like, how can we, gamify this YouTube stream, right? So we're creating kind of like a prediction market where, like, how many views would this live stream get, right? So I'm creating a simple range of, and for the lack of the ability to start with a number, I have to start with a letter. So I'm just picking a range of 1 to 100, 100 to 1,000, 1,000 to 5,000, 5,001 to 10,000, 10,001 into infinity. So I'm giving like different options. Like if this thing goes viral, if someone willing to bet it out and see, hey, maybe they're going to share it out. Maybe they're going to ask people to retweet, because they bet, 10,001 and they're going for it. So it'll be really, really fun to give different options. And that's not limited. I'm just creating a range of different options on here. And so instead of having a mapping, I'm creating a struct. So then when people want to create a bet, I have a structure that has the better, which is the message sender, and then the range that they're betting on. So if I did it with my wallet, I want to bet like 1 to 100. It would then have the structure of my address and then my bet. And that way I can keep a nice small, variable that has both data in there. And then I'm going to create an array of all my bets on there. And is this big enough to see? I can zoom in a little bit if I need to.
It should be good. I have it full
Okay,
screened for
perfect.
anyone who wants to see it.
And I'm going to bring in my constructor. And I think that's what's red lighting here. There we go. And that constructor. So my constructor, all that is really required is our request response address, which is going to be set in our docs. And when we deploy, I'll show you, in order to be able to connect our air node to our smart contract. That is the primary thing we're going to need when we deploy our contract. So that way it knows, what chain we're using and where to do the request and response. Excuse me. Okay. And so now let's get into breaking down each function. Like I said, we have to set up our parameters in order to request our air node. I'm going to go ahead here and just paste this function out and explain it. And all we're doing is literally setting our request parameters. We got to know what our air node is, which we already have in our file, which our endpoint ID, which we already have in our files, and then our sponsor wallet, which we will generate off chain, and then we'll show how that works out as well. So we'll show that generation that's in the docs as well. And then we're going to get into making the request function. Give me 1 second. And that one's a little bit more detailed. but let me paste that down. And okay. It just gave me a warning that I am sending out different requests here. And so I'm doing this request, and this is where we're going to call out to our API with our certain parameters. And we left this openly generic, so anybody can fork this code and put in their own parameters. Maybe they don't want to use the YouTube ID. We did this one. Maybe they want to use the live one of this stream right now. So, you can choose whatever you want. Maybe you don't want the views. Maybe you want the likes. So the parameters are open based to you, but this is all boilerplate code. So like if you look at any request response contract, they all follow the same request, which we have their error node, the endpoint ID, which we set up here. This contract is asking for the sponsor wallet, which we set up here. And then it's going to return back to this contract address. And the only thing that's different is going to be the parameters, which is going to be generic for our usage, right? For what we're going to request out in just a bit, which will be the amount of views the video gets. And I'm going to go ahead and unmark my events here. I'm just going to uncomment these out so we can see that in the contract. So when we do request it, we can see this in the logs of our contract as well. Let's see what's going on here. I will come check that. Oh, okay. Fulfill is going to be on our next section here. And so this is our requester. And so what are we going to do when we receive our contracts? So we've requested the data. Now we are receiving. I'm going to go ahead and comment this out really quick. And so this is what happens when we get our how many views that YouTube has got. And so it'll fulfill. It's going to check our request ID. Remember, we're keeping track of it here to see all our requests to make sure our fulfillments are going in. And then we're also going to see what's the data that was returned. And so again, boilerplate code in which we are getting the request to make sure that looks good. We're deleting the request, and then we're decoding the data. And then I am setting that decoded data to that return response. Remember that public variable that I set. That way we can look at it on Remix to see what we got in return. And then what are we going to do with it, right? So I have a function that's going to execute something based on the response as well. So pretty straightforward. This is our request response format. Kind of like how we did before. There was 3 functions. We have that set request parameters. We have that make the request out. And then we have the fulfillment of our requests. And so far, so good. Hopefully I'm not losing anybody. We're going to get into the DAPI section of it here right now. Okay. And so what we want to do with our DAPIs is, again, remember, we're bringing in this proxy.sol. We're just going to set up a small function to just read our DAPIs. Or sorry, set up our APIs. So what we're going to do is, let me go ahead and set my proxy address. I like to do my sets on the top. So I'm just going to scroll up to the top right here and just do all my setups here in the beginning. It's just how I structure my smart contracts. And I'm going to set my price feed. And I'm also going to set my global variable for this. And create a global address for my proxy address.
How long would you say from start to finish setting up a smart contract like this would be for someone who, has practiced it a few times?
Oh, when I built it, it took, from the logistics side and thinking it through with logic, I would say a couple hours roughly. But with the logic already in place, you could probably get away with 90 minutes in a sense to mess around with it. Yeah. If not, like with the more experience, and if you've done or understand the concepts of both, I think you could get it done under an hour for sure. For sure. Yeah. And we have tons of videos that separate the two concepts. It's just a matter of mixing the two to make something kind of cool. That's a
right,
big
which
thing.
Is what we're doing here.
Yeah. So we're like, oh, do we want to do the same stuff or do we want to spice it up a little bit? So,
and by we, I mean you and not me.
Yeah, definitely. So here we're just going to set our price feed. We're going to set our proxy address. And so we're going to choose our price feed here. So for this case, we're going to be using ETHUSD. And so I'm just tagging it with only owner so we can make sure that this price feed stays consistent. Because if we're not the owner, we don't want somebody coming in and saying, hey, let's change it to wrap BTC or anything else like that as well. And then, like I said before on the demo, all we're going to do is just read the data feed. And so I'm just going to move that on the bottom because I like to do all my view functions on the bottom. I know I'm kind of weird like that, but we're just going to read our data feed. And so basically it's saying anytime we want to know what the price is, we're going to call this function and it's going to tell us what the price of ETHUSD is on that moment of time. So if I wanted to call it right now, it's going to tell me what it is at 10:35 a.m. Pacific time, my time. And so it starts off, just a little note for the developers out there, it starts off with an int 224, And so I typecasted it to a UNT 256. So if you need to use it for anything, for other projects that requires a UNT 256, it's a typecast conversion. And once again, when you do a read, it gives you the value, which is the price of ETH/USD, and the timestamp of when that price was updated last. So, if you ever have a stale price feed, or like an Oracle goes down for whatever reason, something happens and things logistically break, you can have fail safes in your contract to say, hey, if this thing hasn't updated in 24 hours or something, stop the protocol, everything goes on pause until you figure it out. Okay. So that's pretty much the boilerplate of it. And now let's get into the logic of creating some kind of, betting system. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in that function. I'm going to put it right in between here. And so this is a whole lot of code with a whole lot of notes on here. But basically what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, we have this YouTube video, right? We don't know how many views it's going to take, right? This live stream, we don't know who's going to tune in or not within a week or 2 months or whichever. So let's make a bet range. So I'm using this bet range to say, okay, is it going to be 1 to 100, 101 to 1,000, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm making sure that my requirement is in this bet range on there and they're not betting something out of scope. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check my price feed, right? So I'm going to say, what is the price of ETH? So I'm going to make sure that price is, because what my requirement is I want to make sure that whatever anybody's betting, it's going to be a minimum of $20 $20 in US value of ETH. So we know that ETH is kind of dropping in value right now as we speak. It's been going down slowly and slowly. We want to make sure that every time someone does a bet, it's at least $20 in USD value. So what I'm doing is I'm getting the price of what it is now, which I think is like 1630 or something like that. We'll look at it in a little bit as we go live with it. And then I'm going to convert that into Wei, because it is 18 decimals. Anybody that works with the smart contracts or anything, like all the numbers don't have floating points. So we use 18 decimals. So I'm basically getting the value of what people are depositing in times the price. And I'm taking away the 18 decimals to make this in Wei, because the price and the value both have 18 decimals. So we'll have 36 trailing zeros or whatever that number is. And then once I have that in Wei, I'm going to subtract the 18 decimals from there. So then I have that amount in USD. And so it'll do the checks and balances to make sure that the amount of ETH that I have is in USD. And I just hard coded the $20. That's just an arbitrary number. You can change that to $50, $100, or any number you want, or you can even make this a variable and change it from time to time. But just leveraging how you can use the price feed to verify to make sure that it's consistently the same price. If you're a musician or anything and you wanted to sell something for $9.99 on chain, it will always be $9.99 on chain for your customers, no matter what the price of ETH is. If ETH's 4,000, it'll be $9.99, and if it's ETH's $2, it'll be $9.99, no matter what. And then I just kind of add the betters to the betting system. So I have that structure where I have the new bet better, which is the address of the person that bet on the item, and then the bet range. Are they betting within 1 through 100, 101 through 1,000, et cetera, et cetera. And then I'm pushing this to the array of different betters that are out there. All right. And then the final piece of this function, and I tell you it's a lot to swallow, so I'm just trying to break it down piece by piece, is what happens when we execute the bets, right? And so here, let me hide this. And let's take it from the very, very top. So we're going to go ahead and execute our bets. And this is going to be an internal function that's called by our Oracle. And I could use a switch statement, but I went with the else if because it's a little bit easier to follow. Is we get our number back. Let's say the number was 100, right? We have 100 views on the YouTube. So with that 100 views on the YouTube, it's going to go through and make sure who were the people that bet on 100, and it's going to go through the loop to make sure that, okay, these are the winners. And then I reset the winners to 0 just to make sure, because if we run the contract again for another YouTube video, we want to make sure that we reset to 0 at all times. And then I'm going to look at the amount of total winners of people within that winning range. If we have no winners on that one, it'll stop the function, so we won't revert. And then, we basically try again, or the house gets to keep the bets, just kind of like Vegas odds. And then for the price per winner, I looked at the total amount of ETH in the smart contract. And then I'm going to divide that by the total amount of winners. So if we had 10 ETH and there was 5 winners, each one would get 2 ETH each. And then I would just run through all the winning bettors and then pay them all out their 2 ETH prize per winner. And then I would delete all the existing bets, and then we would play again. So it makes it a reusable contract. One thing to note on here, and that's a big note for people that want to, fork and, mess around with it, is I have no way to create a grace period or a some kind of control for people to place last minute bets. Like if I was going to say, oh, I'm gonna start the execution now, they can look at YouTube and say, oh, how many bets, how many views are in the YouTube. So we want to have like a grace period of like 2 weeks, and then something to stop me from like starting the contest and then immediately transacting. But because we are in a demo, obviously we want to see this live. I took out any limitations, but anybody that wants to can use like a timestamp or some kind of Boolean lock to make sure that nobody can bet after the fact, and some checks and balances just to make sure. Okay, so let's look at what we have. Do we have a little error? Oh, I don't think I put my license identifier. Let me just throw that in there. I think we're using an MIT. Always throw in your license identifier.
What's the most creative way you've seen someone use one of these? Like what use case?
Oh, man, like if you're into bookmaking or into royalties, right? One really cool thing that I was thinking about is like, let's say you are a music producer and you have your stuff on SoundCloud, right? And then you got so many listeners. So let's say this artist has 10,000 listeners for this one track that just is fire. You can pay them royalties on chain, right? So you can go to the SoundCloud, grab the API, see how many listeners listens to the track that month, right? And then based on that listener amount, you can pay them on chain with your token or USDC or whatever you want, and then call that request, every month or something. And it's true, right? Like that's you can't fudge the numbers. It's what the API is, and it's what the contract will do. So you can't like backtrack in any negotiations. Or bookmakers, right? Like if you are into UFC fights or MMA fights, you can place bets on like who's going to win what fight. You can add odds depending on the statistics. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with the API that just makes it like so many things off chain that you could bring on chain, and then pay off on chain. Reward members for how many likes you get, or you pay someone to build up your social media in this time frame. If you can get me 10,000 followers in a month, here's the contract that will pay you. If you get 5,000, then it'll pay you this much. So it takes away the need of a middleman to pay it out.
So are you gonna make an API for this weekend's fight event?
Possibly. Possibly.
Uh,
So when we deploy it, remember we need to know what our air node is. So I have this list in our documentations for our contract addresses to say, okay, where is our air node? So we have tons of chains on here, but the one that matters right now is the Arbitrum testnet on Gurley. So you can just grab this contract address, and we're going to go ahead and paste that down. This is where it gets into the nitty gritty stuff of being able to reach everything and move things around right here, and go ahead and throw that out. And it is super fast on here. Like it's amazing how fast this thing responds. And we have our contract deployed. So now remember, we have to do our setup parameters. And so we're going to set up our request parameters first. Remember, we got to communicate with our air node. And that's when we get all our files on our Arbitrum deployment. Remember that thing that Vanch did for us when we build out all this out. So we're going to go ahead and look at our receipt, and that's going to give us some of our information. So that's going to have our air node address, which I'm going to go ahead and copy here. We'll move this to the side just a second and paste that down. So we're going to go ahead and set our request parameters, paste. And now it's asking for our endpoint ID. And so in our folder, bring that up again. Our request ID is in the configuration file all the way at the bottom. I know I use Notepad for this. I know I don't use VS Code. I'm kind of weird. And so I'm going to go ahead and grab our endpoint ID. And then I'm just going to put this to the side as well. And now it's asking for the sponsor wallet. And this one kind of confused me as well on there. It's definitely in the docs for the script to do this, but you need to generate your own sponsor wallet. And that's why we needed that, seed phrase in that air node, because it's going to generate stuff for our air node. So let me go ahead and grab that notes here, and I'm going to show you that generation of sponsor wallet. So just to break this down, it's a script that basically says derive sponsor wallet address. That's going to take your extended public address. That's going to take your air node address, and then the sponsor address, which is our smart contract that was deployed at this moment. So our extended public address is in the receipt. And I'm going to go ahead and grab that entire extended public address. Paste that down. And then it's going to ask for our air node address, which is in that same receipt, which is air node. And we're going to go ahead and paste that down. And then, did I do that right? I don't think I did the 0x. Let me clear that out one more time. I get all zeros. Perfect. And then the last one is the sponsor. Who needs the sponsoring? Well, it's our smart contract, right? So I'm going to move this to the side. I'm going to grab our deployed address, and then I'm going to go ahead and paste that in here. Now we have our script ready. So I'm going to grab the entire thing. I'm going to open up my command prompt. And I'm going to see if I can paste that in, and I'm going to hit enter. And what that does is it reaches out with the tool, and then it's going to, based on the entire setup that we have with our contract and the mnemonic that we sent out, it's going to generate us a private key. And what happened? Extended key. So maybe my extended key is just a little bit off. Let me redo that again. It's going to copy it here on the side.
It's good. It's good to have to troubleshoot things in a
Oh
workshop.
yeah, definitely. We're the crazy ones that do things online, on chain, real time.
Real time, yeah.
That's it. There's always going to be problems here.
Our cooking analogy is starting to fall apart.
We try our best.
You're burning
All right,
the
perfect.
eggs.
There we go. So you see that we got our sponsor wallet here now. So this has been generated on Arbitrum Girly. So let me go ahead and copy that in. And we don't need this anymore. And let me just go ahead and open up Girly RB scan. Look, already set, ready to go. So if we look at it, it is a smart contract with nothing in it. So the thing I always forget to do all the time is to fund it. So this is our relayer. This is the one that's paying for our gas. So when we send our request for our number, our API, this is the one that pays for the gas when it comes back at us because of the two transaction.
So if it runs out of gas, it'll just stop working, basically.
It won't. Yeah, exactly. So let me go ahead and just fund it with some gas. We're going to do about 0.5 ETH. You don't have to do as much, but I'm just on that 0.05 ETH. Sorry.
Just throwing that ETH around on the test net like it's Monopoly.
That's it. Indeed. I feel so rich on test nets. Okay. And so that'll be sent out. And so we're going to grab this address and we're going to fulfill our entire list of requests. So again, just to recap, we need to get our error node, our endpoint, which were given to us, and then the sponsor wallet that was generated based on the two previous numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and send that out.
So can these API smart contracts get pretty expensive if it's like being used for like a very like high traffic event or something?
It's I've done stuff on different ideas on there, and it's really a low cost, especially running on here. I think it was like the way was like 1, so it was really, really expensive. I've been able to fund stuff with less than like $10, and like it's still going. Yeah, it really depends on how much gas here, and I'll explain that in detail of how this goes. And I just realized that I commented out something on here, so I'm going to fix that. So I forgot to do my execution of bets. So I'm going to redo that again really quick. Live coding. So let me kill this really quick and run through that very quickly again. So I'm going to grab that Arbitrum testnet thing and deploy it. The beauty of live coding, because we would actually request it and actually nothing would happen with our bet. So I'm going to redo that again. The only difference here is I just have to change that last address to generate that.
Did I just see like an $8 transaction fee on the testnet?
Oh, that's the amount of ETH on there. Yeah.
Oh, it's like, oh my goodness, what? Did the
Yeah.
bull run just happen in the last 5 seconds?
Yeah. No. Let me go ahead and open that up. Let me get my configuration, redo it with the new sponsor wallet address, and then we'll get that all fixed right now as well. Good thing I caught it. Otherwise, the demo would have been like, great. Perfect. So then I have a new sponsor wallet address, which I'm going to refund as well again. So I'm just going to change this to the new one. And I'll send this one a little bit of ETH too. Zero 05 running, and grab that really quick, and then just reload this as well. So we're going to have our sponsor address. I'm going to grab those two receipt functions for our error node address. Great for anybody following along in the video, just in case. So like, oh, that's how they did it. So let me grab this other one.
Billy, you were at ETH Global, right?
Yeah, ETH Global New York. That's how I got the Arbitrum tee that I'm wearing today. It's a good one.
Oh, let's see it. Let's see it.
Oh, can you see it? Can you see it? I'm like
Here.
leaning back. Yeah.
Now I can see it.
Boom. Yeah.
Clean.
Yeah, I get to hang out. I actually hung out with quite a few people in Arbitrum with James with the prison team. We were doing each side together, and then I got to hang out with Churro and Zero X Recruiter in New York. So it was super cool. I'm a fan of the RB team.
Nice. Churros at Off Chain Labs. He's in the chat right now.
Yeah, what's up, Churro? I can't see the StreamYard yet because I'm like in super focus mode.
No, that's
But
fair. You can't. We've seen how delicate
yeah,
this can be.
definitely. Okay, so
I'm trying not to talk to you too much while you're in the middle
no
of it,
worries.
so you don't lose
It's
your
all
place.
fun. I'm just making sure that we're good on time because we're gonna have probably some questions after, and I think I have a few minutes left. Okay, so
Cool.
let's get into. So our parameters are set for this. Now we want to set our price feed, right? And so this is where we set our proxy address for our price feeds because we want to get that ETH USD price. So we're gonna head over to API3.org, and we can explore our data feeds. And so if you look at our marketplace, we have tons of stuff. We have equities, cryptocurrencies, Forex trading prices across like 22 different options of chains. That's including test nets. But let's look at ETHUSD, right? And so I think Arbitrum 1 is live. And just to show you, we have different options here. We have self-funded and managed. Currently, we have the managed DAPI system here, where you can see there is a 1% deviation with the 24-hour heartbeat, meaning like if there's a change in price of 1%, let's say ETH is 1,000 and then it drops to 990, then it will update on chain. Or if it hasn't changed within 24 hours, it'll automatically update to whatever it is in 24 hours. We also have a 0.5 deviation and a 0.25 deviation, meaning the smaller number of change in ETH, the more it gets pushed on chain. So it's one of the nice key features that API3 has. 1% is the standard, but right now it is currently live with a 0.25% deviation on Arbitrum 1 right now. It's currently live as we speak. So what's cool about this is like as anybody can grab the proxy contract address and just use it, right? So if you are GMX V2, or if you are creating your own DeFi borrow lending platform, you can easily come to the marketplace, grab this address, and then just start using it right now. So it's super cool. Like there's no additional requirements. So like if dApps want to split the bill, or if the chain wants to buy it for another 6 months, they can do it, and the whole chain can then use it indefinitely and until the managed funding runs out, right? Which is expiring November 2023 this year. But if anybody renews it, that means everybody can use it. One thing about this is you can see the data aggregation. So you can actually prove who's giving you the price feeds. So you can actually look at this data feed ID and then backwards check on that to make sure it actually is coming from them, and to make sure that we're not using any third parties and it's coming straight from the source. And these are all aggregated into the single data feed for you guys to use directly. So it is nice to be able to prove, don't trust, verify is always awesome. But let's go over to Arbitrum Gurley testnet, which do not have managed feeds. They're only self-funded, and you can just pay with gas on that. So these are a public good. You can just fund it with gas, and you'll see the on-chain updates happen, 1% deviation with 24-hour heartbeat. And this is funded up to 5 years roughly right now, unless somebody else wants to be a contributor and fund it some more. And it'll
Unheard
just
of runway.
yeah. It really depends on the fluctuation of price. If it changes more than 1% deviation, there's a lot more transactions. So like stable coins are pretty stable, so they don't have a lot of changes. But you have an exotic, token that just constantly moving, requires more gas. So it depends. So
Makes
we're just going to
sense.
grab our proxy contract address. Go for it. I thought you were going to say something.
Oh no, I just said makes sense.
Oh yeah. And so we're just going to set our proxy contract address here. So we're just setting our contract to say, hey, we're looking for the ETH USD price feed. Let's go ahead and paste that down and knock this out.
Is this the moment?
This is the moment. So now we've set up our request aggregators. We've set, communicated with our air node. We've set our price feed. So now our dApp is ready for bets, right? And so we can go ahead and place our bet here. And, for the life of me, I don't know why I can't use decimals here. Like I can't put a decimal here. So we're going to have to work in way. But remember, we want to make sure that all our bets are going to be within the range of $20. So I'm going to go ahead and just grab this ETH to USD converter. And I'm just going to make sure this is updated again. So $20 right now at this price is about 0.12. So about 0.12. So we're going to use this converter here, ETH USD converter, so I can get it in weight. So 0.012. And just to show you guys that it's going to check, I'm just going to do 0.1 and see if we get a failure on there. So I'm going to go ahead and place a bet. And remember, our bet range is the enum. So it's a position of 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'm going to go position 4 because I already know that's going to be the winner. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I put in this much way, which is about 0.01 ETH. And I should get a failure on that. And saying right here, okay, so it's going to estimate the execution reverted. The amount should be more than $20 in USD value, right? So it's going to fail and you can't bet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to up it a little bit more. So I'm just going to change it to 0.2 on mine. And I'm just doing this off the screen here. I'm just updating the price. And I'm going to change my way price to be a lot higher. And now I'm going to go ahead and transact. And then it's going to accept my bet. And then here we go. I'm going to go ahead and paste that down. And so now betting season is open. Anybody that wants to bet can bet. And we're looking to go. The caveat on this API with the API key is that sometimes it takes a minute or so to go in. But let's go ahead and check that transaction. We should see our transfer. And it's going to take a little bit of a moment here. And see, it's requesting it out to the error node. And oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even make my request. I'm jumping the gun. Okay, step back 1 second. So I've actually made my bet, right? And so now we actually have to request the response from it. So it's going to look for what are we looking for, right? Everybody's placed their bets theoretically. We need to get in here. So on this repo that we have out here, I have this encoding parameters, and I know it looks a little bit scary, but if you look at it piece by piece, and let me close this out. Let me get a little bit bigger here. Is remember when we set up our chain API, we set these custom variables with which part and ID when we were setting up our parameters, and we're letting it be user defined. And so what we're looking for is like, we didn't want to hard code the aspect of you always have to get this specific YouTube video with this specific view count. So we left it open so you can change it to any video you want. So we want statistics is what we want from our YouTube videos. And then the ID would be the unique YouTube ID. That would be this video that I just happened to pick. And the ID is this ending sequence right here. This would be the ID. So you can check the ID of any YouTube video and that would show up. And then I wanted the view count, right? So if you wanted to change that to whatever you wanted, you could. And so the way the smart contract works, it works with a decoding function. So we have to encode this into bytecode in order for the smart contract to understand it. We can't put it in plain English. So there's a script here that we have that's called node source encode parameters. And so we're just going to encode those parameters. And it's going to give me the secret, bytecode that's going to make it happen here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab this. This is basically the hex language of what these statistics are in a single line. And hopefully that doesn't like blow people's brains up on there. But that is basically the computer version of what we were looking for. So I'm looking for that request API of that specific ID with these statistics. So I'm going to go ahead and push that transaction out and confirm. Right now I only have one better, right? I'm the winner of that on there. And so now we're going to have that request come out on here shortly. And then see if it goes through. And I'll pop it here.
Yeah, we'll probably have to wait for a minute or two for the to pick up the request on chain and fulfill it. So
yeah.
While
we're waiting, we can also have questions or anything on there as well. On there. Yeah. And then also, while we're waiting for that, I did do I didn't go hardcore. I did bring another transaction. So if it takes a little too long, we can go. But based on this transaction here, we get a log. And it basically comes back with our requester count, gives us our information, and lets me know the transaction that happened here. So I'm going to go ahead and fulfill that. And you'll see in the details, oops, let me go back and make sure I have the right one here. Oops, sorry, wrong one. You'll see that my contract answered back, and then it distributed the amount of ETH that I had to the winners. So based on how many bets were it had, I had, I was the only bettor. I received all the ETH and I won, right? And so that's what happens when I get the callback. I get the response. It lets me know, hey, you won. And let me just check on that here, see how this looks. I'm going to get the return response. That should have come back by now, return response. And there it is. My return response is 781,667 views. if I look at my YouTube video that I just showed earlier, if I go down, it's 781K views. So it's giving me the exact API call of what I'm requesting, and then it's paying out the winners and whatnot. So yeah, that's pretty much how the API works. Like you can literally we just did it live, like within the hour of calling a YouTube API, building a smart contract on chain, creating like a little bit of a prediction market of how many views it'll get. It can be any ID, and then paying out the winners on chain, all like in a trustless manner. Ta-da! As we go on there.
Where's the ta-da?
Yeah. Oh, is there a sound bite?
Where is it? Oh, I couldn't find it. I didn't line it up.
It's okay. But yeah, if there's
In post.
yeah, if there's any questions or anything about, I know it's a lot to swallow, and like if people want to fork the repo, everything is explained in the README. Let me just go ahead and get that README on there, and there's this step-by-step process of what we've done, of what it is, and obviously the video companion will help a bit, but taking you through getting the chain API, getting that all set up, how to set up your Arbitrum Gurley testnet provider URL. It all takes you through a step-by-step process, what scripts to run for Docker if you have Windows, Linux, or Mac, requesting the contract, how to set up your Remix IDE. You can literally copy and paste. We didn't do it with Hardhat or Foundry. You can just use Remix, so you don't have to set up a whole like framework. Setting up your sponsor wallet, which had those codes, like how I did it right here with your extended public address, your Airnode address, and your sponsor wallet, and then setting up the prediction game of how I set the enum. So just quick descriptions, and then we are the dev support. So any questions, you can always reach out to us, and then help you through any problems that you may have. I know it's a lot to swallow, but we want to do something cool, out of the ordinary for a lot of these workshops, and so figure why not bring something that could be done on chain right now, today, on Arbitrum, right? So super cool.
There were a few questions throughout from the Discord, but you covered them. So there's nothing
Awesome.
in the live stream. Just a couple of friendly comments that they liked the walkthrough.
Awesome. Again, we're always around in this video. Like the kind of challenge we'd be interested in for API3 is to fork this repo and rebuild it with this specific live stream on YouTube. So curious to see what people would think of what this live stream would get out with this specific ID. Would be kind of cool for us to see, and then maybe obviously make it with a grace period. So there's a time lock on the betting time. And that would be kind of cool for API3 DAO to check out.
Awesome. I love it. Oh, where's here? All right. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, once you've gone through it, and maybe as you're going through the steps as a developer, that's when those questions come up. Where can they go? To your guys' Discord or?
Yeah, I would say the Discord is probably the best place to ask async. I'm always available online all the time. You'll probably see me everywhere. I'm kind of everywhere because I do a lot of things with API3 and Developer DAO, with community management and hackathon leads, or I'm at a hackathon or doing something. So I think I'm fairly easy to reach. But if anything, I think the best async would be on the Discord on there. And I'm going to grab that Discord link in just a second so I can post it on there. But yeah, that's probably the safe. I don't know if Vanch has a better option as well.
No, I'll say Discord is the best one. You can just get on dev support and either ask me, Billy, or Shar. We'll be there.
Awesome. I appreciate it, guys. And yeah, if you want to mention anything that's coming up for you guys, whether it's online event, in-person events, updates, things like that, feel free.
I will throw out that we are going to be a big bounty for ETH London coming up in ETH London. So API3 will be there. Vanch will be there doing a workshop as well. I think very similar to what we're doing with Chainbase and the API oracles on there. And definitely try out the price feeds, right? Like there is tons of options on there to go with, and especially when there's really no cost right now for people on the DApp. A lot of those feeds are ready to go. So play with them. Let's see what you can do. If you want to fork something and change oracles, we're very interested in seeing what people can do with the price feeds.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Billy and Vanch, for your time today. As a non-developer, I learned a couple things myself. I figure if I just help host some of these workshops, eventually I'll just absorb the knowledge somehow, and then one day wake
Osmosis,
up, yeah, osmosis, and then eventually just know how to do it.
Yeah,
Here, I'll
getting the
paste
flow, right? Yeah.
paste the Discord link.
Yeah, just the structure breakdown is kind of the best way. That's why I kind of broke it down. Like it looks like a lot,
Yeah,
but you're like, oh, it's just template code, and then I modify. This is template code, and then I modify, and then you add your own logic in the middle. Really makes a lot of great things. It feels like magic sometimes. So
yeah. When you look at it like
yeah.
the whole thing at once, it's overwhelming. But the breakdowns are helpful. A question that came in the community was, how would you implement this in a gaming context?
Well, one cool thing I've seen, which a friend that has GU stakes for Gods Unchained, is he created a betting platform between two players to bet with an escrow. So if we played a card game like Pokemon or something, and we picked our deck and say, "Hey, I'll bet you $10. You put $10, so we have $20 in the pot." It's sitting in a smart contract, and then based on the API return of who won, it will then pay out the user or the winner of that game. So you can have like a betting platform between two friendly players that is off chain that supports the main thing. So you can't obviously do it on Gods on Chain, but now you've built this third party platform on top of a game that you love, and then there is a betting platform you can use as well. So, or if you want to always have your cards available for $10 per character, it'll always be $10 whether ETH shoots up tomorrow to $4,000 or $10,000. You always have that price feed that lets you check, okay, it's always going to be $10 for my customers versus the constantly fluctuating device. It was $10 yesterday, now it's $30 today. I can't afford that, right? So having these different options is nice.
Imagine manually just having someone 24/7 monitoring that and having to change it as the prices change.
Oh, there's a script. There's
Yeah,
a
no, I
script.
just imagine there must have been a point in time where that was the case, where oracles weren't good enough, and who wants to live in those days?
Yeah, and then random numbers, right? That's something we
Yeah.
didn't really discuss today, but random numbers are definitely on games. Hitting a boss, for a critical strike, or random. Like the randomness adds the dynamics to a game. So we didn't really.
There's such an insane amount of random numbers in like so many components of games like that, especially RPGs.
Maybe another day we'll demo that for a random number gen. I think with contestants on there, maybe come up with a game. We'll see. We like doing
Little
cool stuff,
hackathon,
right?
little gamer
Yeah,
hackathon.
yeah, pretty cool.
Awesome. I appreciate it, guys. All right.
Nice
Thank
to
you,
meet
everyone,
you,
for
Eli. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you, everyone, for joining and being patient and watching us cook live with some coding. And enjoy the rest of your work week, guys. We'll see you around.
Awesome. Catch you later.
Cool. Thanks.
See you later, guys.